In terms of the agenda and the timing, what we're going to cover the operations side of things. Not going to get into the financials. I can certainly answer questions about financials if someone has some, but I wanted to focus on your operational overview first and make sure that's a fit before we dig into the stuff that, I mean, everyone has financials. The financials usually are not an issue or a deciding factor. But this is what I was going to start with in terms of kind of do an overview, talk to you about how we do implementations, because that's often answers a lot of questions as we get into the demo or of the actual features, if you understand how we're going to get there from here, kind of a thing. And then I'm going to just do a navigational overview briefly, talk about how the items are set up so you can understand when we're looking at forecasts and we're looking at planning and we're looking at the work orders, you understand the item that I'm using and how it's structured. If you want to go ahead and like email people to jump on and put this as our agenda, I'll try to stick to these times as close as possible. What we're going to talk about today is Dynamics 365 Business Central. We're going to go through the order management, inventory, production side of things in Business Central. We're not going to touch on the financials. And then there's some other modules, some optional modules that we talked about in our earlier conversations. One is warehouse management from InsightWorks, shop floor data collection from InsightWorks, and then the collections management, credit card processing side from iSolutions. Not going to try to demo those today. There are recordings out there available. I can send you the links or you can go to their website, but we are going to focus on just the Business Central side. From an implementation standpoint, as I said earlier, it often helps people when we start talking about how to migrate to Business Central and what the process is, as you're looking at the software, kind of understand our process. And first thing that we do from an implementation standpoint is we perform what's called an implementation planning study. That would be basically going through your current processes with your users, understanding how they operate, how you guys operate, understanding the things that you're not able to do today in GP and discuss how we want to be able to do those in Business Central. And then that comes up with the final statement of work. From there, we start doing data migration. In fact, with some of the tools that are available, a lot of times we literally start out with spinning up an instance of BC and migrating your data, or at least as much as can be migrated, just so that you can kind of see some of your own data in Business Central during the process. That wouldn't be the end of the migration because there's a lot of things that don't migrate in the native tools. So we would address all that stuff during the IPS in terms of what all needs to get migrated and how it be migrated. And then we would proceed with getting the configuration set up, validating the configurations, doing walkthroughs. Once we've got the solution validated, basically, we would start doing training, and then you can go ahead and go through the acceptance testing process, basically understanding, proving to yourself, proving to your people that A, the software works the way you guys need it to, is configured to work the way you guys need it to. B, they understand how to do the processes so that, when they go live, they're not going to be going, what do I do now? And then, of course, we go live and then we have the project closure meetings. Okay, so you can see my Business Central screen now. And I'm going to jump right into Business Central at this point. I'm going to start out with just the navigational overview so you understand what you're looking at as we get into it. And then I'm going to go right into order entry, show you guys that. And then you guys you're welcome to stay, or you can drop out and go back to doing real work. This is the home screen for Business Central. There's a lot of information on here. Of course, we've got a lot of red things because it's demo data, so there's all kinds of stuff that's overdue. But that does point out one of the things I always like to talk about, and that is that the information that's on here is actually actionable. These are configurable action items, or cubes, if you will, that show you information like the number of orders that are open, the number of invoices that are open. These would be unposted sales invoices, but it also gives you information about what is the status. So you can decide, like if I show late shipments, if I have anything over one late shipment, I want it to be red. If it's zero, it's green, that kind of a thing. So right off the bat, just visually, you can get a good handle on how things are going. And this is something that can be configured. It does automatically change based upon the roles that are set up, and I'll talk about that in just a second. It also can be configured for the individual as we get into it. As I scroll down, you'll see a whole bunch more of those types of action items. And again, this is where you start getting into, if you're doing approvals, then you can have the approvals block of items on here. If you're not doing approvals, then you can get it out of your way. Further on down, it has what are called insights. And this is something that you get with the current cloud products, where Microsoft is basically doing analysis of your data in the background and comparing it to the industry and comparing it to other people, and then providing you analysis of or insights into your business. So it'll show you things like, top 5 customers by sales volume, kind of a thing. There's a whole bunch of pre-built charts out there. There's several of them right out of the box that you get, and you can also build more if you want to. And then one of the other things that financial people often love is having this, abbreviated trial balance right on the screen. We can also do Power BI reports. You want some KPIs, some key performance indicators, or some data to be visually available there. We can build that in Power BI. We do that a lot with our implementations these days. And then those Power BI reports can be surfaced right inside of Business Central. You can even surface Power BI reports in the side pane that I'm going to show you in a minute, like during order entry, if you want to. Up across the top here is our navigational, how we move around in the system. I mentioned that I was going to, before I jump into the navigation, I mentioned that I was going to talk about roles for a second. So I go up here on this little gear up here, and it gets me into a couple of different things. One is this is where I would go if I want to personalize my screen, move some things around, take some things off, add some things to it. That's something individual users can do if they've been given the security to do it. But generally, it's something you just do once as part of the initial implementation. There's a number of roles that are pre-built in the system that provide 90% of the functionality that our customers want, in terms of, I have an order entry person, or I have an accountant, or I have an accounts payable person, those kinds of things. We can, of course, create custom roles, or we can customize the security beyond just the roles themselves. But I'm using the business manager role, which is kind of like the general manager, the guy who has access to everything, or the person who has access to everything. But I can change my roles. I can have more than one role. So if my primary role is, doing order entry, but I do backup for the invoicing person, those can be separate roles if you want them to, or you can just lump everything all into one for yourself. I do want to change my work date here. I set up my data to operate as if we were in April of 2022. Normally, the work date is today, but with demo data, and to make that data meaningful, I set it up with a specific date so that we can see what we want to see on this. That's my work date, and I think it just changed back on me. Oh, there, it did. All right. Up here at the top, you can see that the menus are broken down by the broad functional area. We've got our financials, general ledger, budgeting, chart of accounts, things like that. Our banking, cash flow stuff is under the cash management. All of the sales stuff, customers, items, quotes, invoicing is all under the sales. Purchasing is under all the vendor stuff, accounts payable. One of the things that, just to set some terminology, sales invoicing uses pretty much the same, terminology as GP. It's a sales order. You create a sales invoice from the sales order. You could start with a quote if you need to. On the purchasing side, everything is referred to as purchase rather than as accounts payable. So a purchase invoice is analogous to your AP transaction entry in GP. So you can start with a purchase order, and then instead of going to a accounts payable transaction like it is in GP. It follows the same terminology as they do on the sales side. So you can start with a purchase quote and get a quote from a vendor. Then it can become a purchase order. When you've received it, it can become a purchase invoice, and then you can post it, and you have posted purchase invoices. Now it's an account payable that I can pay in my payment processing. The other way that we can do is we can flag individual screens that are our favorites, and then those get added across the top right here under the main menu. If you have 4 or 5 or 10 things that you go into repeatedly all the time, you can put those right at the top right here for you to easily get to. And then the third thing that what a lot of our customers do, and I certainly do it all the time because it's the easiest way to navigate, and that is it's got a Google type search. So if I want to go into my posted purchase invoices, I just start typing parts of the word and it comes up with here's my posted purchase invoices. Or if I want to look at my customer master, I just start typing it and it comes up with a customer list here. Or I can look at anything else related to the customer. They're all listed here in my list. Anything that had the word custom in it, obviously, so it shows customization as well. But that is really, really handy because then it doesn't matter where it is on the menu. We don't have to remember the menus. If it's something that we use all the time, we put it at the top on our favorites. If it's something that we don't use all the time, just query it using the search and jump straight into it. Next thing I want to do is I want to talk about the layout of the screens and how the system is built. Most everything starts with kind of a list view like this. So this is kind of like smart lists in GP. Just like smart lists, you can customize it. You can create different views. You can search within it. I can just start typing there in the search bar and it automatically filters it down. I can also create filters and save them. If I go into, I can do things like I want to filter by this field and I want to see only, so this is popping up the filter there. I want to see only items that have an assembly BOM. When I do that, I scroll across now. Whoops. So now you can see that this shows that it's filtered and I only see the ones that are yes. I can save that and give it a name, and then it's available all the time, and I can even make it my default view. So if you look at items, but you generally only want to look at specific items or categories of items, you can save that as a view for yourself so that you're not seeing all the other stuff that doesn't matter so much to you. I mentioned a bit ago about having a side pane. This is what I was talking about. So as I click on any items here, it automatically shows a lot of the details for the items in that. And if I scroll down, you can see that I can have a lot of additional information. And one of the things I can put in here is a Power BI report, whether it's a customer wanting to show maybe sales by month over the last 12 months, or whether it's an item wanting to show sales or movements or purchasing, any of that kind of stuff. You can put that right here in a graph so that as you're doing an order or any transaction, you can see more details about the process and what's going on. You can also see that we can have attachments for anything. I can hide this pane to give myself more real estate just by clicking the little information button up here. That's what that is. And I mentioned wanting to save things as favorites. That's this little ribbon thing right up here. If that's clicked, then that's on the front page as one of my favorite screens. Kind of an overview of how the system works and the layout of stuff like that. Before I move into looking at an individual screen and kind of showing you that, I also want to point out something that is just natively inherent with Business Central because it's built cloud first and built from the cloud up, if you will. It is natively integrated very, very tightly with your Office 365 stuff, your Excel, Power BI that we've already talked about, other Power Apps for doing workflows if you want to do things like that, and using Outlook. You can have an Outlook integration, and the Outlook integration is intelligent. So if someone says, hey, I want a quote for these 3 items, and you click on that, there's in your email, I'll just pop into my email here and show you real quick. So if I get an email here, there's this Dynamics 365 thing up here. Now this is linking to our CRM, but you have a similar thing if you are linking into Business Central. They can send you and say, hey, I want a quote for this, and list the 3 items. When you click on that, it'll actually read the quote and look at the data that's there and suggest, hey, do you want to quote these 3 items? And it'll list them on the screen. It interpreted what you was or what they asked for. And if that's correct, right from within the email, I can create a quote and then email it directly back to them without ever having leaving Outlook or my email. So very good integration there. The other part of it is looking at things in Excel. I've never met an accountant that doesn't like Excel, and very few of my manufacturing ops people also don't like Excel as well. So you can do 2 things in Excel. I can open whatever I have on the screen in Excel. So if you're pulling up some information that you need to send off to someone, maybe that's not even in a Business Central user, maybe it's an external accountant, maybe it's a vendor or something that you're going to pull up a list of the purchases for the last year or something like that. You can just open that in Excel and it'll dump the data out, and it's not connected up. It's just, now it's a raw data dump. It's not doing anything in the background. But I can also edit in Excel, and I want to show you that because that is really, really powerful and very, very useful. Maybe not so much useful for a screen like the items, but it could be. But it's really useful for doing things like if you've got really long sales orders, you can start the sales order, then open up the sales lines in Excel, cut and paste the items that you want to put in, or maybe real long purchase orders that you need to manually enter. And you'll see that I've got this side pane over here that's labeled Microsoft Dynamics. What it's actually doing in the background, based upon my login, which is, this is my demo login called TMG admin to our demo account, is connecting up to Business Central and pulling the data down into Excel. And so now I have all of the items in my item list with all of the data all the way across here and being able to set it up. Now, I remember in our conversation that you guys said, I think you guys had tried, if I'm not missing up, I had like 5 conversations with people like you guys that 1 week. So I hope I'm not crossing things up, but you tried to implement the requirements planning or the MRP in GP, and it just didn't work right for you guys. You didn't have some of the data set up, and it was just not going to be conducive to try to go through and do that. Well, if you look at this item list here and I start going all the way across, you can start seeing all of the data that is the setup for everything about the item, including all of my requirements planning stuff. So I can put in, what's my primary vendor? What's the vendor's item number? How do I want to plan this item? Is it a make to order item or a make to stock item? Is this an item that I'm going to purchase, or is this an item that I'm going to make with production orders? Oh, and then how do I want it to suggest in my MRP? So these are all the fields that you guys can set up. You can see that it's really, really easy. Once I get 2 or 3 items set up, I can pop in here and then basically create all the rest of it, set up everything I want. Once I get it like I want it, I can click publish and it pushes it right back into the database. I want to point out that, because it's always something that everyone says, particularly if you have an accountant in the room, yes, it does utilize security. So if you don't have security to change the data on your item master, it won't let you post that. It also won't let you change fields that are not changeable. For example, quantity on hand. That has to be changed via transaction. You can't just go into the item master and change the quantity on hand. So it won't let you post those kinds of things. So it is security based and it is rules based. It's using all the same rules in the background as if you were doing it on the screen manually. We see this used a lot for things like general journal entries, loading all the payroll data into a journal. I mentioned I've got a customer that does blanket sales orders. So when they get a new contract where they're going to ship so much per week for the next 52 weeks, they can just go into the create the first line in sales order entry, and then pop into Excel, copy that 52 times, put in the different quantities. If there's different quantities, put in the different ship date, so that now I have a sales order that I'm going to ship weekly for the next 52 weeks. And it's super, super handy. I was going to go into the item. Normally I would do that, but let's just use our sales order screen. I know you guys wanted to see the ordering process. I just clicked from my home page on my sales order tile. I could have also gotten into it up here in my menu, or I could have done my search and typed in sales orders here and gotten into my list. If I know right off the bat I'm going to create a new sales order, I also could have used my action item right up here to create the plus sales order. It's going to create a new. It's not going to go to that list first. It's just going to go straight into the sales order screen. This is my list of sales orders. Looks very much like the list of items that I told you, except I've got sales order data instead of item data. I still have my information on the side here. It provides not only the order information, but it can also provide customer information. So if I go down here to, let's look at this one here. Yeah, so there's my customer information, what their credit situation is, and this is customizable in terms of what you want, or I should say personalize in terms of what you want to see about a particular sales order, as well as what you want to see about the customer itself. When I drill into a sales order, now you're seeing what all the screens look like. So this is a transaction entry screen. If I went into the item master and went into the item card, it would look very similar from the standpoint that Business Central is built using what they call fast tabs. So this is my general fast tab. And if I scroll down, I've got invoicing details, I've got shipping and billing, and I can control a few different things about this. Number one, you'll see that I've got a show more button over here on the side of my general fast tab. We can look at things at 3 different levels. If I say show more, it shows me everything that I've got configured to show up on my general tab, which is basically most of my order header stuff. Again, this is configurable. You decide what you want to have on there. And then you can also configure which fields do I see when I see everything? Which fields do I see when I say show less? So just the most important fields that I need to enter on every single order. Or if I click this and hide the tab, we can see data left there, both down here before and up here. I can see some of the basic information. If I hover over that, you see that that is my posting date. If I hover over this, it will show that that is the due date, and here's my status. That lets you still see some of that data right up front, but get it out of your way so that I can have more room to be maintaining my lines, as an example. Every single screen is built this way, whether it's a master item like customers or items, or whether it's a transactional thing. The differences between transactional stuff and other things is what's on the menu up here. Obviously, we have things like process and release, which are related to orders, and you'll have different things up here for the items. From a navigational standpoint, and again, you also have the action tabs over here. You can see more details behind this particular customer, this particular shipment. If I want to enter a new order, if I happen to be looking at an existing order, I can just click the plus button up here. I can also copy orders. So if I look at my more options here, I think it should be down here. Yeah, copy document. So I can copy existing orders, or I can copy posted invoices to new orders and things like that. I'm going to back all the way out to the beginning. This is what you get when you log in, and I need to create a new order, and so I click that right there, and now I am in my sales order screen. When I enter the customer, I can enter it any number of ways. I can start typing the item or the customer number, customer code, whatever you want to call it, in the box here. Even though this is a customer name field, I can still type in my customer code, and as soon as I tab away, it pulls up that stuff. I could also have started typing green and it would find all my greens and filter it, or I can just simply look at the list and scroll through it, however you want to find the customer. I've picked this customer, and today, remember I said our current work date is, we're acting as if today is April 12th, happens to be my brother's birthday, and we can set like what is the default due date, or, based upon, in the background of if we're entering an order, we always require 3 days lead time or 2 weeks lead time, whatever. I want to ship this item. I'm going to put in the date, and notice I just typed it in with 04/15/22 and it figured it out, or I can use my drop down calendar here and go to when I want to ship it and pick it like that. Down here now, so that's my order header. If I need to see other information like the details here, and maybe have an email in there, things like that, I can pop it open to look at that. But in general, whatever I need to have on every single order that doesn't default in the background, I put those on my fields here. Now I'm ready to start entering my lines. Same thing here. I can start typing my item, whether it's the number, or I can say, type the description, and it shows me, and things are still running a little slow in the background here, but at least it's not my internet that's causing the slowness. Now, this is a sandbox, and Microsoft doesn't put near the horsepower or the processing priority on sandboxes that they do the live systems or the production systems. Sometimes you'll see that little spinning thing in my environment here, but you won't necessarily see that, or generally won't see that in a production environment. So I'm going to select this item, which is one of the items that I created to work with you guys. And I created one that is a make to stock item, so I expect to have this item in inventory. And I created another one that's make to order. We'll go through those in a little bit after we get through the ordering process and stuff. Here's where I can define where I want that item to ship from. So you guys have 2 locations in the States, or if this is an international order, it may be shipping from either your European or China locations. So I'm just going to put in my main warehouse, and I want to have 2 of them. When I look at the item information down here, I can see that as soon as I put that item in, I should have scrolled down and shown you guys, but here's my item number for this line, the quantity I just put in, and then right here shows the available inventory and the item availability. I can see right off the bat that I have 11 items available, which has already been reduced as soon as I put that 2 in. Now there's a total of 9 available because I've got 2 on this order right here. So if this is something that we are going to, enter and pick and ship right away, then as soon as I enter the item, confirm the price, I can scroll on out. There's a whole bunch more information out here about how you guys can categorize things by product lines, by programs, by brand. All that kind of stuff can flow through the system as well in what's called dimensions. But if this order is ready for me to pick, then I just simply need to come in here and get on the right. There is an option to look at item availability. Oh, wait, it's down here. I can look at item availability by location. So I can immediately pop in and say, okay, here's what I need. I need 2 out of my main warehouse, and I can scroll across and I can see that I have 11 on hand in that warehouse. But if I didn't have any in that warehouse, I could immediately see, all right, I've got some in my East warehouse, or I've got some in my, my European warehouse, or not. So you can see all of that. What it shows you in the right-hand screen is for the warehouse you selected. So you only have to take that step if there's not availability there. Then you can take the next step to look at, okay, where is it available? Or when would it be available? Because that's the other thing you can see here is availability by period or by event. If I have a purchase order coming in that's bringing some in, or if I have a manufacturing order or production order that's going to make some, I can see when that's going to be coming in, and then I can promise it to the customer based upon that. If this is something we're just going to pick and ship, then I need to release it, and that changes my status to release there. And now I can go ahead and generate a pick list for this and push it out to the warehouse. If you're using something like the warehouse management WMS Express from InsightWorks, be a slightly different process, but same capability, just a different way of generating it. So here's my pick list. Here's where it's going to. If I'm going to pick it and ship it and do all that, if I'm using an integrated system within GP, then all I really need is picking, because then I'm going to come bring this order back to the shipping station, pull it up, and it's going to tell me where it's supposed to go and how it's supposed to go. If I'm using something like World Ship Out, then I can go ahead and pick it, and then I've also got my ship to address and stuff for me to put directly into World Ship. To complete the process, we've sent it out to the warehouse, we've picked it, they've let us know that it's been shipped, whether that is by processing the shipment themselves, and now we're just going to invoice it, or we're going to come in and say, all right, we've shipped it, and we're going to post the quantity to ship, and we can also post the invoice. So if you're doing it in 2 steps, then I would come in, put my quantity to ship. I can leave that there if I want to, because when I come in here to my post and I click post, I can tell it whether I only want to post the shipment. I'm not ready to post the invoice. Maybe we require that the package be delivered, so we get the delivery notice back from UPS or whoever's delivering it before we invoice it. If we're ready to just go ahead and ship and invoice, I would click both here. I do want to point out that if there are shipping charges or tracking numbers and things like that, again, if you're using an integrated shipping thing, that stuff will just automatically show up in here. But if you need to enter that yourself, then you would come down and enter that information down here before I do the ship and invoice. And we can have it pull the data from WorldShip, or you can use something that's built into Business Central. InsightWorks, the company that has a WMS system, also has a module called Dynamic Ship, and then it's integrated with everything. It's integrated with UPS, it's integrated with FedEx, and it's all built right into the system rather than having it be a separate application that is integrated, which obviously if everything's tied together or built together, it's all more seamless. So when I'm ready to post this, whether it's posting the shipment or invoice, I come in here, I click OK, and it processes it in the background. And now we have a posted invoice. Now it is a receivable that is on that customer's account. If I ever want to see the invoice, I could go ahead and send it by opening it and then sending it to them. And I can do that directly from here, where I can send an email just by clicking this. And if that customer had an email on there, it would default to this, but I'm going to send it to myself. Okay. And it shows you what's going to be in the body of the invoice. It also will attach this as a PDF. And when I click send, it goes out and sends it. So in a few minutes, I can pop over into my email and you can see what this looks like in terms of what the customer gets. That's the whole process. And I could have, when I was in there, let me go back into one of my orders here. If I go back into this order, when I did my posting, I could have posted and sent it in a single process. I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to open up the invoice and then send it. It can just all be one single process. We've also done some things with customers where we've allowed them to batch post and send. It takes a minor customization, but we've got one customer that's sending out about 1,200 invoices a day, and these invoices are coming in from an external system. They actually do EDI processing. Their EDI processing system pushes the invoices into Business Central, and then they just click a button that goes ahead and posts and sends every invoice that got pushed in today. So there's things like that we can do as well. The only other part of the ordering process would be, and we touched on it, so I don't necessarily need to show you, but what do I do when it's one of those make to order items where it's never going to be in stock? And there's a couple different ways we can do that. We can either create the production order to make that right from sales order entry. So if I go back into my 30,000 customer, and I said I wasn't going to show this, but I actually do want to show it. This is my make to order item. You can see as soon as I put that in here, I come down here and there's no availability by any location. If I put in my location code, there's still nothing available. I want 3 of these. Okay, so what do I do next? Well, there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. I mentioned that we can create the order to make this right from within order entry. This is an extension that one of our partners has created. We've got a partner up in Toronto that we do a lot of work with called Sabre, and they have several extensions. I can literally come right in here, and I guess it's this one, come right in here and create a new production order for this line or for more than one lines, for multiple lines. So if I had a bunch of things that were make to order, I can create the production orders just with one click to do that. It's not very common that the order entry people are the ones that would or should be creating production orders. So the second way that it can be done, I'm just going to go ahead and release this, is through my normal planning worksheet process, which we're going to go through in a little bit. So when I'm doing my planning worksheet, whether it's something that is forecasted and I'm building to stock, or it's something that's make to order and I'm making it as I get sales orders, it's going to show all of that stuff. Here's all the production orders you need to create. Here's all the stuff you need to buy in order to execute those production orders. And we're going to go through that as in the next section as we get into that. So that's the whole order entry process, whether it's something that's in stock or something that you make custom for them. Well, that's it. If we've gone through the whole order entry process. Now I want to go back into the items that we were talking about so that you can see how some of the stuff is set up. And I need to clear my filter first because I've still got this filter. So clear that filter. So now I type my MS, and here's the 2 items that I've set up. The first item, whether it's make to stock or make to order, the processing is all the same. It's just a matter of what do you want to execute on? What do you want to action on? So I mentioned, we've got all these fast tabs. We can hide or show a lot of the data, as I mentioned before. But I'm going to come down here to my replenishment and my planning tabs. This is where the data is set up for how do I want to make or buy this? Do I want to do it one at a time? Do I want to do it within time periods, etc.? So first thing I have to define is how do I want to replenish this item? Is this something I buy or is this something I make? And if I make it, do I want a full production order with routing and labor and all that stuff? Or do I just want a simple assembly? So if you've got some things that you have in stock that you simply have to do an assembly, you don't care about you don't care about any kind of routing, you don't care about scheduling things. I just need to put these 5 items together and put it back on the shelf. I can use a simple assembly order that does nothing but relieve the inventory and put the finished good in inventory as I need to restock the shelf. But for our demo purposes, we're going to look at the full production order. And then during the implementation, you can decide whether you want to use production orders or assembly orders or a combination. Often people use a combination because of the simple aspect of the assembly orders are a lot easier to use. In terms of when I need to produce it, how do I want it to suggest? Number one, I can either tag this as a make to stock or a make to order. And then if I'm going to make it, what's my routing and what's my bill of materials? You can see that there's not just a single routing or bill of material tied to this item. That's because I can have different routings for different locations. If I make it in one location, I might have some higher speed or automated equipment. And so it's using a different work center and it takes a different amount of time and there's a different cost burden associated with that. But if I'm making it at the other location, it's much more manual. I generally only do that if my first location is totally swamped or I need something like tomorrow and I just need to go ahead and get it made today, and we'll incur the higher cost to do it. I also can have different bills of materials based upon where it's being made, because I might have the same component, but if I'm making it in Europe, I buy it from this vendor and it's this item number. But if I'm making it in the US, I buy it from a different vendor and it's a different item number. Fulfills the same purpose inside the product. So the product itself is the same, but it's got a different bill of materials based upon where I'm sourcing it and how I'm doing it. Then on the planning side, this is where when I'm doing my requirements planning, when I'm doing my planning worksheet is what it's called in Business Central, how do I want it to suggest my production orders? Because I just told it that I want to do production orders for this. How do I want to suggest that? And the first thing obviously is the reorder policy. Lot for lot just means that it's not lot numbering per se. I'm suggesting it every time I see a need, I'm going to suggest an order to fulfill that need. And then what I suggest to fulfill that need and how much and all that stuff is driven by the information down here further. I can also basically, every time I come up with a need, just have me make 50 more. Okay, so that's a fixed reorder. 50 is my economic order quantity, my batch quantity that's the best. And we sell enough of this. I don't want to make them in twos and fives. I just want to make our economic order quantity every single time. So that's what fixed order quantity is. The others are just variables off of those, depending on which pieces you want to do. One of the other things that's important for lot is not only the quantities that I want to make, but I don't want to make something today based upon one requirement and 2 days later make it again based upon a different requirement. I have enough space in my inventory. I'm willing to incur the additional wait time of having that stuff loaded in inventory, even if it's a make to order item. I want to say, as soon as I see a requirement for the item, I need this item on April 15th. Now look out into the future and see if there are any other requirements that I can pull back to the 15th and do it all at once. So that's what this accumulation period is. And then the rescheduling period says, all right, I've got an existing order scheduled for April 15th, and my sales order has changed or my underlying demand for that item has changed, and I don't really need it until April 20th. Do I want the system to suggest that I can push that production order out? I no longer need to do it on the 15th. I can do it on the 20th. Or if it's within this rescheduling period, I just want to leave it alone. If it's within a week, I'm not going to touch it. If it pushes it out more than a week, then go ahead and push it out. We'll reschedule it. So that's what this period does. And these are the key things for making the requirements planning process work for you guys. It's using this data to generate the requirements that it's going to suggest. And that's the next section I'm going to go into. The next thing I wanted to show you before I move into the planning processes and the forecast processes is the data behind it, so you'll understand there. So if I go up to this item and I look at under my related stuff in my bill of materials, I can look at my overall structure. This is a great view, particularly if you've got a multi-level bill of materials where you're making one thing and then that gets assembled into a different thing. This shows me the entire structure. So really good view of the entire structure of this item. So in this case, the top line here is what I'm making. And then here's the three components that I'm using to make that item. So I've just put in a few items here just to show you the process and understand it. And we only need to go through one work center on this item. It's the assembly department, and it takes us 20 minutes per item. Okay, so this is my bill of material and routing. I can also drill into the actual structure of those things by coming down here and going into my production BOM, and now I can see all of the details. So let me pull up I think my bicycle has multiple levels. Let me pull that up. So if I come in here and look at this structure, here's my top level. Then at my second level, I've got a wheel, front wheel, a back wheel, chain assembly, brake, etc. And within the front wheel, I've got a hub and then other items that are purchased and additional machining and all that kind of stuff. So I can see, everything by level here, or I can see the whole thing all the way down. Okay. All right. So let me go back to the items that I did here. So I showed you the bill of materials for this particular item. I just have 3 items, 1 assembly operation. If I look at my next item here, my make to order, the item number 2 for today's demo, and if I look at that product structure, this is my make to order item. It has some of the same things in it, but it has a couple of extra things as the other item. Still assembly, a couple more components, takes a little longer to make it because it's more of a one-off situation and I've got to set things up. So these are the 2 items I'm going to play with. Let me show you, before we dive into the requirements planning, let me show you one of the components so that you can see how that item is set up. So similar to our production items, only now we're purchasing it. And here's my primary vendor. If I want to put the vendor's item number, I can do that as well. From a planning standpoint, this is the primary replenishment system, but I could still create a production order instead of a purchase order. If this is something we can either make or buy, what I define here is the primary, but if I am going to make or buy it, I need to have both of these things filled out. I can have purchase here and still have a bill of material and routing for it. On my planning on this one, I put in a different planning method just so you could see the behavior of it. This is where I put in the fixed reorder quantity. Basically, every time I get at or below 5, I'm gonna order 50 more. So they're shipping it to me in pallets of 50 or cases of 50, whatever. So that's my order quantity, and I'm just getting 1 at a time because I don't need more than, or maybe this is cases of 10 and I'm getting 5 cases at a time. That's how that stuff's set up. All right, let's go into our next section, which is how do I put in, you saw how we put in an order. I'm going to put in another order here in a few minutes. In fact, I'm going to go put in that order right now. In order to show you the data that we want to see in our requirements planning process, I'm going to put in my MSFG01 and main, and let me put in 10 of these. Now you can see from my availability standpoint, I put in a quantity of 10, but I only have 9 on hand. So that's going to show up in my planning process. So that's one of my orders. I'm going to go ahead and release it. And then I'm going to create a second order. I could just create 2 lines, but I'm going to create a second order here. As soon as that finishes releasing. Same customer. And here I want the MSFG02. And in my main warehouse. And I'm going to do 7 of those. I want to have a different quantity in there from what I've looked at before so we can distinguish the effect of this order. For this one, I want to put in a planned delivery date of 04/30/22. And so that I just had it update my lines because I didn't put that in to begin with. So now I'm going to release this. Now it doesn't have to be released in order to plan. You can control what you want to plan for, where you can say, if it's not released, I don't want to plan for it. If it is released, do it, or you can have it plan for everything. You can even have it plan for quotes. Like if you have quotes that are a certain status or quotes for a certain customer, you can configure it so that, hey, when I give this guy a quote, it's just a matter of, do we have the right price? He's got to have the paperwork to issue his purchase order. But 99.9% of the time, when I quote this, it's going to become an order. So I want to go ahead and plan for it immediately. And of course, if it then doesn't become an order and you've already created the purchase order or the production order to do it, it'll come up and tell you, you can cancel this production order because the quote that I was using or the sales order that I was using to generate this demand went away. So the next thing I want to go into is I want to show you how we've entered an order. We've got those in there. You have some things that you said you make to stock, and so we want to do forecasts for the make to stock items. There's 2 ways that Business Central does forecasts. I can manually enter a forecast. So I want to, let's look at this by month. We can forecast by week, by month. It's very uncommon for someone to do day. The reason that you might do day is if you want to have some items forecast on the 10th of the month, some items forecast on the 15th of the month, some items forecast on the 20th of the month, but they're each monthly forecast. I just want the demand coming in throughout the month, so I'm spreading it out. That's generally the only reason that you would do it by day, unless you're like really, really huge where you're making tons and tons of stuff like GM or something. On my item, I put in, so here's my monthly forecast. And if I scroll down here to my 2 items here, I have, my make to stock item, my make to order item, and I just simply type in the number. Normally I'm doing 12 per month, but we do a sales show in July or in June, and our orders are always up after that sales show, kind of a thing. So I can have this be obviously different based upon how things will work. So I can manually set my forecast using this tool. I can also do it by location. You don't see it here without selecting the location, but these are all forecasted at Maine, not at East, as an example. So I can do it by location. The second way that Business Central can do forecasts is using the insights that I mentioned earlier. Once you start getting some demand data in the system, once you start getting usage data in the system, now you can use a tool where it can suggest the forecast for you based upon history. Obviously, the more history you have, the better that forecast is gonna do. A few months in, it can start suggesting a forecast based upon the last few months usage, but obviously you don't have enough usage in there to make seasonality type suggestions where it does exactly what this does. Once I get, a couple of years of data in, now it can see that I've got these spikes in July and August, and it can suggest that forecast for you. So there's 2 ways we can do forecasts. Pretty much everyone's always going to start out with creating it manually, but over time you can start letting it help you make those suggestions as well. Part of the implementation process from a data migration standpoint, Business Central has things called packages. It's a little bit like Integration Manager and importing data, only way more powerful because you can import a whole block of data. So like I could import my customers and open orders all as part of the same, and open quotes and stuff like that, all as the same part of the same configuration package if you want to, or you can do it one file at a time. That's part of the implementation process. Is we're going to work with you guys to, obviously there's some data that'll migrate directly over from GP into Business Central just at the click of a button, but the data that doesn't migrate, forecasts being one of them, we could export that sales usage data into Excel, let you guys tweak it, and then import it in as my ongoing forecast. Here is a configuration package called customers, but I actually have both my customer and vendor in this import. And once I create what I want to import, then I can actually have it create the Excel template for me, and it'll put each of these tables on its own tab in a single worksheet. So this is where I can export. I can define what I want to use this package for. I can export the package, which means create the Excel spreadsheet with all the different tabs on it. Once I define, or once I load the data into that and get all the fields defined, then I can import it as well. So this is the data migration tool, but it also can be used as an ongoing basis to import things, or you can just use the edit in Excel process that I showed you earlier. So we've got a couple of orders in, we've got a forecast in. It's time to do our planning. So that is in a tool called Planning Worksheet. This is my MRP. It's actually both my MRP and my MPS, Master Production Scheduling, as well. So let me just start by getting rid of all these so that we have a clean slate. All right, so when you walk in, you have a clean slate. Notice that I have a worksheet name up here. It's just called default. So you can have multiple worksheets. If you have one person that's doing production planning in Florida and a different person that's doing production planning in Kansas, they can have their own worksheets with their own filters on them. And if it's a different person that's doing the purchasing, they also can have their own worksheet. I'm just going to work on a single worksheet here so that we can see the whole process. So it starts by me going in to calculate my plan. When I calculate my plan, I tell it what I want it to do. So I want to plan from April 1st through March 31st next year. And I want to start with my production schedule. So it's not truly a production schedule. It's not like GM where you've got this big giant MPS. It's just, this is what's going to suggest your production orders versus your purchase orders. When I get into MRP, it's going to suggest my purchase orders, or if I have sub items, it'll still suggest production orders there as well. I can define that I want to use a forecast, so you guys would be, and I can define what part of that forecast I want to use. So if I'm already in my work date, I mentioned that we're operating as if it is April 12th. So I could say, all right, we're already 12 days into April, and given my general order lead time, if I don't have the orders already in there, then I don't really care about that forecast. You know, if I forecasted 12 for this item in April, but I've only got orders in the system so far for 6, I want to plan for 6. I don't want to plan for 12. So I can tell it exclude the forecast before May 1st or not. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 001, 05, 01, 22. And in order to not see a bunch of junk from my demo data, I'm only going to do the items that start with MS. So I'm going to start there so that you can see the impact of the stuff we've already been talking about. This is where the data that we looked at on the item master comes into play, and it starts out by suggesting here's what you're going to do. Now, normally you probably wouldn't plan a whole year out. You don't want it suggesting orders that are, you know, almost a year out. So the global parameters are defined right here in my manufacturing setup. So I can define where I want my default location. This is global. I can define whether I want to run MPS and MRP at the same time or not. I've got it turned off right now. So these are the global parameters, but 99% of what it's going to use for planning is set at the item level or at the item location level. So one of the things I didn't talk about was I can define what locations I store the item, and at those locations, I have all the same parameters that I showed you on the item card. So I can define if it's in this location, we're purchasing it. If it's in this location, we're making it. Or I can use different routes like we talked about. Okay, so there's very little that's a global default. It's really driven by the item itself. Here's what it's suggesting to do. Now you notice that there's an action message here. When you start getting data into the system, you can start seeing things like cancel or change quantity or change date or change both. That is one of the options you can get there. And it'll put an exception out here. So this record has an attention notification. So I can click on this and it can tell me that, hey, I've got safety stock on this item and I don't have enough on hand. So I need to order that safety stock. And oh, by the way, that means you're late. You know, it's April 12th and we don't have the safety stock. So that's why this attention flag is on there. But if it was something where you need to cancel it or change it, it'll show up under what's called an exception here. And you would do the same thing. You can click on the exception and it'll tell you exactly what it's saying and why it's doing that. You can filter and sort. So I could look at just the exceptions just simply by sorting this. Possible action messages are change quantity, change date, or change both. It does do both. So if you have a single order that is both my demand my demand changed both from a quantity and date, it will actually suggest both. In fact, this is one of the first ERP systems I've ever dealt with, and I've been dealing with manufacturing systems for almost 30 years now. One of the first MRP systems I've dealt with in the small to medium sized business that actually can do both on a single line. It can tell you, hey, not only does this date need to be changed, you can push this purchase order out 3 weeks, but you also need to increase the quantity or decrease the quantity. It'll tell you both. When you hover over the exception, it'll basically tell you both of those items in a single line. All right, so it has its suggestions. We can look into why it's suggesting it. So that would be one of the first things that I would generally do while I'm still vetting the process out. Once I start understanding that everything's set up the way I want it, I like the way it's making my suggestions. You don't necessarily need to do this on an ongoing basis. You just need to do it when you see something that looks a little funky. So I can come in here. This is my item availability by event, but it's time phased, as all MRP systems should be. And then I can start dropping down of, starting out with, here's my existing inventory that shows up as a scheduled receipt, but that's actually what's already on hand. It just shows up in this column because it's a plus. And then I have my minuses over here, and then it all nets out in the fields over here with the projected balances, forecasted balances, et cetera. So then I can drill into it of saying, what is this? What do I have going on here that I want to look at? And this is where I can see I've got an existing planned order it's a suggested order. That's where you drill into why is it suggesting things. Once you've decided that, okay, this is what I want to do, I actually want to go ahead and create these. It's based upon checking these items here. So when I say, all right, I want to go ahead and do these 4 things. All right, I vetted it. This is what I want to do. I click those. And so the next thing I do is say, carry out the action message. So here's my suggested action, and here's the ones I want to process. So I go ahead and say that. And then I get to tell it what I want to do. Okay. Do I want to just make these? So there's 3 levels of production orders in Business Central. I can have planned type things, firm planned. So I have the sales orders, I have the purchase order or production order forecast or whatever. I want to go ahead and firm plan it because it's within the next 60 days. Maybe I do planned for the stuff that's out a year. I do firm plan for the stuff that's, within the next 60 days or so. Or I can create the firm plan and print it so that I can go ahead and just get it right straight out to the shop if you want to. I could have rolled out here and said, no, I want to do 30. And I could also change the date as well if I wanted to. Okay. So I went ahead and did a couple of these production orders. If I now go over to my firm planned production orders, you can see here's the 4 items that I just created in the system. Okay. Before we move on from that process, let's go ahead and look at our MRP. So now I'm going to do the same process with the same dates and the same forecast, but now I want to look at basically my purchased items. And again, so that I don't clutter it up with a lot of noise from my demo data, I'm just going to filter it based upon the items that all start with 802 because that's the components that I used. So here you can see one of the exceptions. Okay. So when I click on this exception, projected available inventory is below the safety stock. So I'm out on that as well. These are probably similar. Yep. So that's one of the suggestions, obviously. So it's telling me that, or one of the exceptions, it's telling me to make it new. If I had more data in here with different dates, I usually try to set it up so I can see some of those other actions, and apologize for not thinking ahead to do that this time. But so these are adding in the items that'll be purchased down here. So when I click on one of these lines here, I can scroll out here and you can see that here's the order type. So this is my purchase order versus production order. So this is where you would go if I say, normally I purchase it, but guess what? Today I want to do a production order. So you would drill into that and change it to be a production order instead of a purchase order, and then you could create it. It's telling me that I need to order these items, and here's my quantities based upon what's available in inventory, what's on order, everything. I can look at the same, item availability by period or by event or by location, all that stuff, and decide to take action. So here's the purchase orders. This is one I created the other day when I was setting some of this stuff up. I just created this one while you were gone based on our planning worksheet. So once I've created it, basically I just need to come in and release it and then send it to the vendor. So I can email it to them right here. Once I've received it, then if we're using the warehouse management tool, you would just receive it directly in the warehouse and it automatically update. And so then I could have a view showing me where I've got received purchase orders, so I can post the invoice or wait until the vendor sends me the invoice and then post it, confirm the receipt and post the invoice. So that's the next steps on the purchasing side. So we've got about 20 minutes left. I think we've got time to go into our production order and complete the process there. So let's grab one of these items. Let's grab this one here for the 7, because that's one of the sales orders that I created that for the make to order item. So once I have a firm planned order, when I am ready to start basically releasing them to the shop. So whatever your timing is on that, today I'm going to go ahead and release the ones for all of next week, or maybe just release the ones for Monday. So I go in and look at my expected starting date, come in here, change the status to be released, and that basically pushes it over into my released production orders, and it went away from here. So that's kind of my last step before I'm ready to push it out to the plant. Again, if we're using the shop floor, InsightWorks shop floor data collection, now it'll show up on their monitor. So if you've scheduled it by work center or whatever, now it'll show up on their list of things to do, sorted the way you've got it configured to be sorted in there. So if I go into my released production orders, I see a similar list, and now I see the one here that I just released. So now this is ready for me to process, and I can go in, I can print, if I want to print my work order job card, that's the word I was looking for. I can print that in here. I can look at things like, do I have any shortages? All the normal stuff you'd expect. Down here, so the way that Business Central works is if I'm just making one, like a normal production order that most people are used to, I put the information right up here and it automatically creates it down here as here's the items I'm going to make. But if you have situations where, for example, if I'm doing injection molding and that one mold makes 5 parts. So I have a single production order, but I'm going to make 5 finished items from that single production order. So that's what these lines are. Sometimes you'll also have like fall off. So when I make this, I have, 5 pounds of scrap plastic when I'm done making this. So I can actually have that generated right down here so that I automatically have my scrap plastic inventory up to date every time I do a production order. So that's why we have multiple lines down here. This is not my bill of materials. This is what I'm actually making. So if I go in here, I can go in and look at my components and my routing. So you're just going to see exactly what I showed you a little bit ago. Here's all the components that I'm going to use, what my quantities are, etc. Whether I have availability or not. Obviously I do. Okay. And I can also look at my routing. There's 2 ways that we can do the processing on this. One is by using shop floor insights that from InsightWorks. So if people are using printed job cards, this is the out of the box job card. It's not great as far as I'm concerned. So a lot of times this is one of the most common areas where we'll do a custom report. Because one of the things it does is obviously we only have one operation on this. Yep. So this particular production order with the bills of materials I set up only had one operation. So it's showing here at the top, and here's the items I need to complete this operation. So I can fill it out via paper, and then the paper comes back in for me to enter it into the system. Or if you're using shop floor data insights, they can be doing this right out on the shop floor. How many did I make? I can start it, do my work, tell it what I used, how many I used of each of these items. Like if I broke something while I was doing it, I might have 8 of one of these instead of 7.
Sure.
Yeah. And then I can tell it whether I'm done with that operation and how many I completed, or I can just say I completed 3 of these because I'm done for the day. Tomorrow I'll come back in, that operation's still open. The thing that I don't like about this particular, or the out of the box job card, is it shows each operation on its own sheet. So you can't see a single sheet that would be like a job traveler that's going to travel with the materials. So we often wind up doing, for the people that want to use paper and want that type of a traveler, that's one of the custom reports we often end up doing for those type of people. If we're doing shop floor insight where it's all going to be on the monitor anyway, then it's not necessary. That would be an implementation decision, and you guys can decide how you want to do it, which way you want to do it. But doing it on paper, and I've created my traveler, it goes through the process. Once it's done and ready to ship, it comes in here, back into the office for someone to do the posting for it. So the first thing I would do is I would come into my production journal. Now there's 3 things going on here. One is, what am I consuming? Okay, so that's my component consumption. Second one is, what did it take? What operations, how much time, how much machine time, how much labor time did it take to do it? And then third is, how much did I make? I can process those each in their own journals. So I have a consumption journal. I have a labor time card, which creates the journal to post to the production order. And then I have a output journal to show what was produced. If you are processing things, you have multi-step processing operations where I want to report things operation by operation, you typically would do the consumption journal consumption journal in time as you do each operation. And at the end, to receive it off the production order, you would do the output journal. For demonstration purposes and for people that literally do have the shop traveler and it comes back, and then they enter everything at that point in time all at once, they have what's called a production journal, which pulls it all together in a single operation. So this is showing my consumption, and this is showing my output. So I am consuming 7 of these items, and then I'm going to output 7 of those. And all I need to do is confirm that that's what I actually want to do. I want to do all of those. And what was my run time for these? It took me 185 minutes, and I could do it in hours if I wanted to, but minutes is often more common. There is a way to just issue standard time if you want to do that, rather than manually entering how much time it actually took. It's up to you. The other thing I need to do is not only confirm what I've used, and if I have any scrap, enter the time, but then tell it, am I done? Because I might have said, okay, it only took me, I did 185 minutes, but I only did 3 of them. So let me post the consumption, let me post this much time and the receipt of 3 of them, but I'm not done. I could do that if you wanted to process the stuff daily. But again, most people that use this process, they're doing it at the end. So they're just clicking, yes, I'm done. And now I post. So once I post it, then it's now received. I have a quantity finished here, and they are in inventory, and I can go do the shipment for the sales order.
Right.
So that's kind of the flow of basically what needs to be set up, how you manage orders and forecasts in order to have good requirements planning, and then going ahead and showing you the last couple of processes of how you can do a production order. Insight Works is the company I've been referring to. So if I go to their homepage, they've got several free applications like the WMS Express. As long as you have, as long as you're using the simple standard transactions, receiving, picking, and not getting into, the more complex WMS type capabilities. And as long as you are using 5 or fewer devices per location, then you can use the free WM Express. It still takes time to implement it, but you don't have to pay any licenses for it. You can also, if your customers aren't coming in or your vendors aren't having the stuff come in pre-barcoded, or if you need to generate the barcodes for your made items, they have a barcode generator you can use for free. And they also have a graphical job scheduler that you can use for free. And then the full apps include Warehouse Insights. That's the full WMS system. They have an advanced inventory count, which we highly recommend whether you're using WMS or not. And then there's the shipping tool that I mentioned earlier, and then Shop Floor Insights. And it has a quality module that's available as well as an add-on for Shop Floor Insights. The other thing that we sometimes see our customers wanting to use is they have an advanced scheduling, finite capacity-based scheduling system, which is the big brother to the free graphical scheduler. This presents everything in a graph, and you can move it around manually, but it doesn't automatically like optimize anything. It's simply showing things in a graph based on the dates that the system calculated, which is not capacity based. It's purely time based. This one makes it capacity based, and it's literally automatic. Really, really beautiful system. If scheduling is an issue for you guys, highly recommend that. And obviously, doing anything from a barcoding standpoint when you've not been doing it is going to be a big step. And if you get to the point where you now want to do some of the more complicated things like suggested putaways on receiving and, directed picking and things like that, then we can always later implement the full version. You're not losing anything on the implementation side of things. So if you look at any of these and you have any questions, then I can schedule a one-on-one. So next steps would be, I think it makes sense to look at the budget, obviously, have an understanding of what it would take based upon different options and capabilities. We can schedule a time early next week to do that. And then based upon reviewing the budget, we can finalize what you guys want proposed or not proposed in the initial project.